My name is Ibrahim Mahama. I'm a visual artist from Tamale, Ghana. The starting point for the installation is Spill of Good Things. A couple of years ago, one of my younger brothers died in Tamale at the hospital. The MRI scan that was at the hospital had been damaged for more than 15 years or so, and they couldn't diagnose him because of that, and then he died. I think that his death could have been prevented. And of course, it's not an isolated case. You can also look at it in relation to the deteriorating healthcare system, not just in Ghana, but across the world. As an artist, I've always been very much interested in collecting objects. Most of the objects I collect are mostly associated with death. And in Tamale, there is a place called Bunkurayile in our local language, Dagbani. And it means the house of old things. So I was going there collecting these things and I chanced upon the beds. These beds were used in the Tamale Teaching Hospital mostly. And because they've been used to a point where they're broken and they have rust and other things in them, I think that they somehow embody the memory of the history of the beds themselves and the systems that they are coming from. During the post-slavery era, Ghana was becoming a fast producer of cocoa in the world. So the British needed to extract or exploit cocoa. So the railway infrastructure was built, and then the idea was to use it to extract commodities. People from the north and other places would migrate to the south to work in the mines, to work on building the railway. So I was very much interested in the history of that labor to begin with. When I acquired the trains, they were not just any ordinary trains. They were trains that had very deep historical meanings and relevance. And I thought that it was somehow very important for us to be able to draw this connection. But when I transported them from Accra all the way to Tamale, where my studio is, I had to remove the leather in the seats because I wanted to repair the train and reuse the train. But the leather was quite interesting. I almost interpreted it as if it was a scarred body or a body that we were somehow peeling. And then I wanted to complicate that further because there I realized that it almost had this relationship to a body which was in a state of decay. So there are these migrants who historically have moved from other places to the city centers for work, and mostly they tattoo their names on their bodies in case they died or they were moving in transit and they were lost or something happened to them. It was a way to identify the body. And I thought, okay, why not combine that with these leather forms? I think that the names are important to me because a lot of people die all the time in hospitals due to negligence or due to the lack of supporting infrastructure within these hospitals. And I was trying to link that up to these historical conditions from the period of slavery to the idea of using forced labor in order to be able to build these extractive systems and all. Some of the names are also coming from colonial maps, which I collected. Also, the Geological Survey Department would collaborate with these Japanese companies, which they'll fly these planes across different cities, make manual photographs of all these places, and they had to train Ghanaian cartographers to manually draw the entire cities. Well, I thought that it was actually quite interesting to use those topographies and then superimpose the drawings of the beds, because when you strip the beds down to lines, it just becomes a topography of a landscape, and I thought that could be a skeleton on top of these maps. But also, I found these historical documents from the early 20th century which showed the men that were carrying the rail lines and the building of the rail lines across the tropical regions in Ghana. So the idea of the drawings also came about, the idea that, okay, wouldn't it be interesting to somehow combine the rail lines together with the body? So I was very much interested in what it represents in allowing young men who are mostly unemployed due to economic systems to carry these rail lines, and looking at the relationship between the heaviness of the objects and then the body. The thing that draws me to these objects is the life that is within these objects. They accumulate life or memories in such a way that we as human beings do not accumulate, because we are mostly living through linear time, and these objects are somehow going back and forth into time in terms of what they are. And sometimes you think one object will not be able to do justice to it. You need maybe multiple objects, because each object also has its individual voice. And then with these multiple objects coming together, they will be able to tell a much bigger story. A lot of the work that is represented here mostly deals with the question of death, but it's not so much about death as an endpoint in itself. It's more or less about us looking at the conditions of humanity as it is now, but also going beyond humanity, because in my work, I'm more interested in the life of humanity through objects. So if we can somehow pay attention more to the world that we live in and the objects that we produce, the objects that we possess, and also what they symbolize, with the memories that they come with and how they themselves speak to us, then maybe we'll make another step in terms of our own relationships on this planet.